The sad events of Grenfell Tower made people remember World Trade Center. But before I say anything, I just want to say two things. One, the investigating agencies came up with the report that they did because I think they approached the problem with the conclusion already foregone in their head that this act has led to what has happened. So I don't think they approached the investigation impartially, that was it really this act or could there be something else involved, which is reason why they came up with the report, because they were always trying to explain scientifically what has happened, or having already decided that this is what has caused this. And the problem with mistakes is you can't make people accept their mistakes easily. More so in this case because this mistake has actually led to a much bigger global action subsequently. So it's really hard to solve this impasse. But the reason people don't accept that report is because it, on many levels, flies in the face of common sense, leave alone scientific common sense as well as mathematical probabilities. I'll get to that in a sec, but there's another thing I want to say. We always look at the footage of World Trade Center falling, and we always imagine it to be just 4 outside walls, a tower made up of 4 walls and with 2 pillars inside supporting it, and we forget about many other things. Now, another thing that we forget is that fire does not depend only on how much amount of combustible material is there, but 3 other things play a very important role. One is the oxygen flow, second is the removal of carbon dioxide, and third is the surface area. I'll get to that in a sec, but let me get back to the Grenfell Tower and World Trade Center comparison just for a few quick words. The reason World Trade Center in America fell was that the building regulations in Britain came into place much later. Now I can understand why Grenfell Tower didn't fall, and I can also understand what is being implied over here. But I do want to say one thing, that tall lanky building was designed to withstand massive earthquakes. So let's get down to what is the official explanation as to why World Trade Center fell. They say that the impact knocked out the 2 pillars that were supporting the structure, and then the fire, fueled by jet fuel, raised the temperature so much that the ceilings started to sag because of the weight, ultimately collapsing onto one another. And when too many ceilings collapsed, the dynamic weight they created, they pushed the tower down the way it fell down. Now there are many factors which go against every aspect of this theory. First thing, as I said, World Trade Center was not just made up of 4 outside walls and 2 pillars. There were many internal walls, crisscrossing walls, T-joints, and possibly pillars supporting that structure internally. So it's just not a case of 4 walls falling away. You need to imagine all these crisscrossing walls crushing down, giving away at the same time. If you go to a building site and you look at a construction site, there are always internal walls which are also supported by metal frames. So the mathematical probabilities start ticking straight away. We need not only the ceilings to collapse. It's not like every story was a big room with a big ceiling which just sagged and fell down. Every ceiling was hugely compartmentalized by different intersecting walls inside. So it wasn't just one ceiling, but it was, even if that entire ceiling at every floor was laid out as a one single complete slab and not as many separate slabs, even then that ceiling was not just hanging in mid-air with only 4 walls and 2 pillars supporting it, but there were walls in between. So if there's one ceiling, there's another ceiling, there are walls in between as well. And you can't say that just because this ceiling sagged, this ceiling can sag just like that because there's another wall underneath it. If there's one wall over top, there's another wall underneath. So the ceiling cannot just sag like this. It will have to sag here, there as well, in many different compartments. So the mathematical probability starts taking straight away that majority of the compartmentalized ceiling has to fall almost simultaneously onto the lower ceiling, which has to fall almost simultaneously to create that dynamic weight. And not only that, those walls which have a strength of their own because they are not aligned in parallel to each other, but are actually crisscrossing each other, giving them extra strength. And to add to that, they are made up of bricks. You can't crush bricks. You can break them away, but you are imagining that it's not just the ceiling falling apart and not just the 4 outside walls blowing away. Those internal walls are also collapsing at the same time and at the same height as well. So if you say that there are many walls and only one section of the building was to collapse first, there's no way the building will come down like that. It will actually topple over to one side wherever that has breached, and that it will continue going that way. For it to fall down, not only the ceilings but the internal walls have to collapse at the same time as well. So there's a massive compartmentalized ceiling. And think of it, where would be the ceiling hottest? Where there is fire. Will there be any people standing in the middle of the fire, or would they have moved away from the fire? How much weight would really be there to make that ceiling collapse? A highly compartmentalized ceiling. So see the number of probabilities which are working against the entire ceiling falling at the same time, all the walls, internal walls collapsing at the same time, and then creating that dynamic weight to push the whole building down. That's a high number of probability. Does the official version explain that? If it doesn't, then it has a fatal flaw. Then let's get to the point of fuel and combustion. It doesn't matter even if you have this thick layer of fuel, but if it's only got this much surface area, then it will only burn for this much surface area, and it will keep burning. Of course, it will keep burning until it has consumed what is underneath, but it still will only burn at the surface which is open to the air. And the thing with combustion is, once the residue starts building up on top of stuff, it can actually extinguish fire because it disconnects the fuel from the oxygen supply, which is why whenever there are deliberate fire instances, arson cases, the investigating agencies actually manage to find the accelerant used, because that accelerant gets absorbed by different surfaces which get covered by burnt material and don't burn up. And this is how fire investigations are done. But that's not the entire story. For something to burn, doesn't matter how much stuff you have to burn, you need rapid supply of oxygen. And as much as you need oxygen coming in, you also need the carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide and other gases that have resulted because of burning to move out. And depending upon the building design, the flow of air, there would be a direction from which oxygen will come in and a direction from which carbon dioxide will flow out. The fire will be strongest closer towards where oxygen is coming in, and slowest towards where carbon dioxide and other gases are exiting out. It's not like just because the whole building is fire, then the entire building has got the same temperature. And then the steel frame was protected by bricks, concrete and other stuff, which is actually heat repellent. You can raise temperature a lot by burning a fire, but that does not mean all the heat will transfer to what lies underneath those structures, because they are bad conductors. And leave aside not only transferring the heat to those structures, because there will be temperature variation. Some part of the frame would be hotter than the other part. So you can't say that the entire structure weakened to the same extent at the same time. And if the entire structure does not weaken to the same level at the same time, the entire structure will not collapse at the same time. And if the entire structure will not collapse at the same time, there's no way the building will collapse into its own. It will topple to the side. These are the mathematical probabilities which are working against the explanation. How do they explain these probabilities? Which is the problem? And I think the reason is they approached this problem thinking that it was the terrorist attack which caused the fire and the fire brought the building down. Had they actually approached this thinking that maybe there's something else involved, they might have been open to other issues as well. Now, of course, this definitely means there are big allegations to be made that who is actually responsible for those attacks, if not just the terrorists, who else was involved there, which is why the inside man theory comes in. It's easy to blame investigating agencies. There might be a few moles, there might be a few bad eggs in NIR, CIA, and FBI, but that does not mean that that entire organization is bad. America still has got patriots, and patriots fill up patriots in every department. So you can't blame an entire agency. There might be a few issues, but I don't think that is the reason here. I think they just approached the problem in the wrong way. There might be other things which might have slipped my mind, but I don't want to bore everyone with my ranting again, because a lot has already been said on these issues. But I do say that we need to revisit this. So think, people, think.